All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are coming to you live from Palo Alto on Stanford University campus. Before we get going on a role-playing call, we ask that everybody on the call make sure that your audio is muted as we are recording this call and want to make sure we have a great version to send out to those who aren't able to make it today. By way of introduction, my name is Rob Anderson, and I work on the Young Alumni team here with the Stanford Fund. I currently manage the 5th Reunion campaign and have also worked on the 15th Reunion campaign in the past.
And my name is Keith Norton, and I'm a major gift officer, and I cover the Northeast region of the U.S. Today, Rob and I are going to role play a potential conversation that you, as a committee member, can have with a classmate in regard to your class campaign.
Now, before we begin, let me first say thank you to all of you for your time, support, and efforts on behalf of your alma mater. These campaigns would not be nearly as close to as impactful without you. We are extremely grateful to have you as volunteers. Now, with that in mind, we also want you to remember that as a volunteer, you are talking to your classmates on behalf of the university and helping build the case as to why one should consider supporting Stanford. What we hope is that you, as a volunteer and as a supporter of Stanford, can help your classmates to seriously consider a meaningful commitment to the university in honor of your reunion.
That's right. And if I may, I'd also like to remind everybody that any information we share with you regarding classmates is highly confidential and should be treated with great respect and sensitivity.
Good point. Exactly. So now we understand that we can't predict exactly how each conversation will go, but we're hoping that by listening to us open a conversation, bring the gift into the discussion, and close with talk of next steps, that can help you with your classmates.
Now, during this conversation, Rob is going to be a campaign committee volunteer, and I'll be his classmate.
That's right. So before calling Keith as a campaign committee member, I will first of all read my briefing on Keith, and then I'll check in with my class giving officer with any questions and send Keith an email or a text to set up a time to talk. Now, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to say that Keith is a classmate of mine who I traveled abroad with in an overseas program in Italy. He is in his 30th reunion. And at his 25th reunion, he was listed at the $10,000 level on the honor roll, and he was bolded for having given to TSF. So let's begin the conversation. The phone rings, ring, 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 and Keith answers.
Hello, this is Keith.
Keith, this is Rob Anderson calling. How's it going?
Rob, it's great to hear from you. How are things in San Francisco? Oh, wait a second. Is it time for me to send a check?
Yeah, well, San Francisco, gorgeous and expensive as always. And a good guess. I am on the Reunion Campaign Committee this year, so we'll definitely want to talk about that in a minute. But I signed up to chat with you because it's been too long. How are you, buddy? Tell me, how are things going back east?
They're great. Barb and I are finally getting a chance to relax now that the kids are out of the house, and work's going well. Things are plugging along.
Great. So this is where the conversation really focuses on catching up and personal stories. This is a good time for you to listen to your classmate and consider the suggested ask. Now, for Keith and I, from what I've probably heard thus far, he's most likely having a quote-unquote normal last 5 years. In other words, what I'm listening for is that he hasn't, say, lost his job. He hasn't mentioned any unforeseen major expenses, such as healthcare or kids' colleges or something else of that nature. So I'm probably feeling that my initial planned ask for $50,000 pledge over 5 years is still right on target. So now I'm going to pivot the conversation towards the ask and the gift. Keith, no kidding, you've had a busy year. So now that the kids are out of the house, do you think you're going to make it back to campus for reunion this year?
Well, we're hoping to get back. We'd love to be able to spend part of the week before reunion down in Santa Cruz, then get up in time for the festivities.
Ooh, Santa Cruz. That sounds like a phenomenal idea. Hey, what about Cecily and I joining for you along with that one? Well, we'll leave it at a maybe. All right. Well, listen, I'm glad you're planning to come back. These reunions keep getting better every year. Stanford is really doing a great job with them. Were you able to come to our 25th? I know I saw you on the honor roll, but I can't remember. Did we catch up on campus?
No, we weren't able to make it, but I heard it was a great time. Life has just been a little crazy, as I'm sure you know. We did make a gift for the 25th, and we're happy to do so. I think it was for the Stanford Fund.
It was to the Stanford Fund, yes. But before we talk about that, though, I just want to know, did you make that gift all at one time? I saw you were listed at the $10,000 level. Was that a one-time $10,000 gift?
Yeah, considering that the 25th was a big deal, I thought that 10,000 would be a nice gift then, and felt good. Then I think that Barb and I have been giving 2,000 a year since.
Wow. That's fantastic, Keith. Thank you. I'm sure Stanford really appreciated it too, but that's really great. Now, did you know that during reunion years and during our campaigns, you can be recognized for pledges over 5 years, not just that gift that year?
Well, that makes sense. I think I may have heard something about that. Can you explain it a bit more and talk me through how that works?
Absolutely. Be happy to. So during a reunion campaign, Stanford works to recognize not only your gift that year, but also your commitment to the habit of giving. Therefore, if you are an annual donor, as you already have been, you could be recognized on the honor roll for the full 5-year commitment, and the class campaign would receive that much towards our total. It's Stanford's way of encouraging consistency.
That makes perfect sense. But what if something changes with our situation?
Another great question. So I can check with our CGO, but from what I understand, pledges are not binding, meaning that if your situation changes, you can just call Stanford and tell them you need to adjust or change your pledge. You can also pay it off over 5 years, or if it makes more sense, you can pay it all off at one time. It's totally up to you.
All right, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to continue supporting Stanford and making a difference in our class campaign. Tell me, Keith, I know you made the one-time stretch gift of $10,000 at our 25th reunion. However, now that the kids are out of the house and things are slowing down a bit, do you think you and Barb would consider a $50,000 pledge? So essentially stretching to $10,000 again and continuing that annually?
I'd need to talk to the boss about that.
Yes, of course you do. Please do. If it helps the conversation along, my wife and I actually already committed to that same level for the campaign. I guess you could say they got to us early. And in case you didn't know, a $10,000 gift does put you at the President's Fund level, which means you get to attend a special reception during reunion weekend with the new president of the university. For us, we looked at all the incredible things the Stanford Fund has been doing recently, and we just decided we wanted to commit at that higher level this year.
Oh, yeah. I think we were invited to a President's Fund event for last reunion, but couldn't make it.
Yeah, absolutely. They have them every year. Cecily and I went to the one in November, and it was an absolutely beautiful event. And we had a chance to do an intimate Q&A with President Tessier Levine. These events are really well done.
That would be nice.
So stepping back, here is the point in the conversation where it's great to pivot to closing that conversation and outlining the next steps. So back to the call. Keith, I'm glad to hear it. Well, how about this? Why don't I put you in touch with our CGO? She can share more details about the Stanford Fund and the different areas it helps. And after the two of you chat, if you want to talk to me again, I'm happy to have a deeper conversation on how Cecily and I decided to stretch our giving this year. What do you think about that?
Sounds good. And I'd love to talk to the CGO about the gift. Pretty sure I've already seen an email from somebody this year.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Nothing if not persistent. Why don't you just wait for an email from me connecting the two of you, and then how about I give you a call in 2 weeks to check in? That will give you time to talk to Barb and your CGO.
Sounds great. We'll plan on that and look forward to catching up more either on the phone or back at reunion. Now, we're going to pause here. Obviously, that conversation went very well. I am, after all, a great classmate. But sometimes that conversation can go a little bit differently. Now, let's go back to Rob's ask and explore some different scenarios.
So tell me, Keith, I know you made that one-time stretch gift of $10,000 at our 25th reunion last year, or 5 years ago. However, now that the kids are out of the house, things are slowing down a bit. Do you think you and Barb would consider a $50,000 pledge? So stretching that $10,000 again and continuing that annually?
Well, that's something we might consider, but I was wondering, how much does Stanford really need our money? We're pretty involved in our local community, and don't get me wrong, I loved my Stanford experience, but I'm just trying to see the value in my gift at such a big university.
That is a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. First, let me just say that it's great to hear that you and your wife are so engaged in your community. Hopefully you can tell from my volunteering on this committee how passionate I am about philanthropy in general. It's just wonderful to learn about all those in our class who share that sort of passion. Secondly, I'm not here to ask you to stop supporting your local charities. Rather, just to include Stanford in your portfolio of philanthropy. Our hope is that your experience on the farm has affected who you are today and what you've done in your life in a positive manner. And you feel excited to help provide funding for students today to continue having those opportunities. With a university as massive as Stanford, it can be difficult to see how your gift can make a difference. But let me reassure you, every gift matters. I know I recently learned that gifts of $5,000 or less make up more than $10 million towards the Stanford Fund last year. Also, of the 22,000 undergraduate alumni who did make a gift to the Stanford Fund last year, 65% of those gifts were $250 or less. So hopefully you can see that what we're supporting and what we're doing does have a strong collective impact on students and the university. And remember, this is about access to education and making sure Stanford can attract the best students in the world and assure their success, regardless of their background.
Oh, interesting. I had no idea that level added up to such a large amount. It's nice to know that Stanford knows that as well, and it makes me feel like my gifts are noticed. All right, we're going to stop here again. Another objection you might hear is just a simple no. Here's some thoughts on how to respond to something like that.
So Keith, tell me, I know you made the one-time stretch gift of $10,000 at our 25th. However, now that the kids are out of the house, things are slowing down a bit. Do you think you and Barb could consider a $50,000 pledge? So stretching to $10,000 again and continuing that annually?
I don't think we can do that.
I totally understand. I don't want you giving more than you're comfortable with. I mean, would you still consider a 5-year pledge, though? You said you support Stanford annually. What about $25,000 over 5 years?
Yeah, that sounds a bit more in our range. We can consider that.
Keith, that's amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it, and I know Stanford does. Why don't you talk to Barb about what works for both of you, and in the meantime, I can put you in touch with our CGO. She can answer any questions you might have and also suggest options that work for you and Barb. Stepping back here, okay, so hopefully these conversations were useful, provided you with a general framework on how to approach, engage in, and then close a gift conversation. We realize each conversation you have with a classmate will be different, but hopefully these were useful talking points. Before we end today, we'll take the last couple of minutes of the call to answer a few of the questions that were sent in to us from some of our volunteers. And I'll start that off with this first question. The question is, how do I close a gift? And the answer here, I mean, that is a great question and one that we want to help you with. We have found that when closing a gift conversation, it is most effective to ask 2 questions of the donor. Number 1, would you like me to send you a giving link? And number 2, would you like me to connect you with our CGO so he or she can provide more detailed information and answer any questions you may have? Usually, the donor will let you know his or her preference, and then your action items are clear. We caution you, if this comes up, to never take credit card information over the phone. And we also encourage you to always follow up with your CGO after the conversation closes, simply to update us. Even if your classmate has just requested a giving link, it will definitely help our team to know to be on the lookout for the gift to come in.
Okay, our second question is, what does the new tax law mean for supporting Stanford? Is the government taking a cut out of my donations now? This is a great question. The reality of the new tax law is that there are still a lot of moving parts and ongoing legislative changes to those parts affecting charitable giving to higher education. For now, it looks like there will be new taxes to the university's endowment and on certain types of endowed gifts, but it depends on the designation of the gift, how much it's for, and what form it comes in. The best advice I can give you is to contact your CGO so he or she can go over the details of your gift and figure out the best path forward. Now, that said, I do know that annual gifts, such as gifts to the Stanford Fund, won't be taxed, as the Stanford Fund is not an endowed fund. And as you know, annual support is our main priority for reunion campaigns. So no harm in committing to a new pledge today.
That's right. No harm at all. And here's one more question. If I'm reaching out to two different classmates, let's say one who may be able to give $5,000 and another who may be able to give $50,000, how should those gift conversations be different? The reality is these conversations will be almost identical. You will still want to be upfront towards the beginning of the conversation as to why you're calling. You will still want to catch up on personal matters and see where your classmate is in their lives right now. You will still want to glean any information you can as to what other philanthropies they're supporting and or what their passions are these days. Truly, the only real difference is the ask amount and the description of the giving level that qualifies them for example, either the President's Fund or the Leadership Circle based on the giving amount. No matter the amount, though, the best course of action is to stress the importance of providing meaningful support. For some, a meaningful stretch gift is $5,000, and for others, it's $500,000.
Okay, final question. After getting in touch with my classmate and having an initial conversation, how do I know if or when it's time to consult our class giving officer? A great rule of thumb is to send a brief update to your CGO after you've conducted any of your outreach to classmates with a brief note on each conversation. For example, a quick email saying, reached out to Bob, had a conversation regarding athletics. Or Katie tentatively agreed to a $50,000 pledge. Or Martin is really interested in learning more about the neurosciences department. That way you and your CGO can figure out the best way to follow up to guarantee success, whether it's a quick thank you email to confirm a new pledge or a deep dive into a particular area of campus with white papers and additional instructions.
That's exactly right. So with that, we want to thank everybody for joining today. We had a great time doing this and hope that it was helpful for all of you. Should you have any questions at all about reaching out or about conversations with classmates or any aspect of this call, do please follow up with your CGO and we will be able to send you any answers to any of your questions over email or over the phone in the future. But for now, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll look forward to a great campaign year. Thanks, Keith.
See ya.